The Baltimore Ravens get huge news as Mark Andrews is back at practice. We react to it instantly here on Locked On Ravens, talking about what it means for the team, what it means for Isaiah Likely, and more. Let's get into this live edition here of Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Ostreicher of Ravens Wire, here with you on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks so much for being here, making Locked On Ravens your first listen each and every day. We are free and available on all podcasting platforms. That includes over in video form on YouTube and audio form wherever you get your shows. We're here on an instant reaction live edition here talking about Mark Andrews. And today's episode of Locked On Ravens is brought to you by Gametime. Down the Gametime app, create an account, use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. And this is big here. Just a little Friday afternoon stream right around 2:30 here. And we're talking Mark Andrews. And the reason we're talking Mark Andrews is because he is back at practice. I think the best case scenario for this Ravens team. So we'll talk about that all here today, what it means for the Ravens, what it means for Isaiah Likely and his potential role. So plenty to dive into here today. And if you're here with us on YouTube Live, be sure to subscribe, follow along here. We have a lot coming your way in terms of content. So there's a lot to dive into with this Baltimore Ravens team. And I'm really excited because Mark Andrews can really unlock this Ravens offense. Stuff that hasn't really been unlocked already. I think we've seen even with him out, it's been really awesome. But at least for me, what this Baltimore team can now have potentially. Look, we don't even know if Mark Andrews is going to be back or not, but who knows? It could definitely be a thing for the Ravens where you can get him back and you can have Isaiah Likely in the mix as well. So I'm excited for it, and we'll dive into it all here today. Let's start with Andrews, though, and just what he's going to be able to bring back to the team. And for me, look, this injury is one that's not easy to recover from, right? It's one that you're not usually going to be back in this amount of time for. So at this point, I'm kind of pulling up what the timeline is. Again, I'm no doctor, but for me, I think it's really interesting and really intriguing to look at, he's 52 days out from surgery. So we'll see. And whatever happens with him, they still have Isaiah Likely. If he isn't able to come back, that's okay if he's not able to, but it would just be such a big boost. And I don't know. Baltimore has a lot up their sleeve right now in terms of what they can do, but I feel like there's a lot that can be unlocked. And I think part of it is using two tight end sets with Andrews and Likely, which we'll get to a little bit more in the second part of the show here. But I think, first of all, Andrews is not going to be at 100% when it comes to actually what these playoffs are, right? It's a big injury, big surgery, and I don't really know. I don't really know what it ends up meaning for them in terms of, does he play on a pitch count? Is it something like that? So I don't know, but it could be something where I'm looking at it now, but it's about a 6-week recovery. So it's going to be interesting here. And I know that for Baltimore, there's a lot in terms of what it could actually mean. And the first part of it is for Baltimore, it's Mark Andrews, Zay Flowers, Odell Beckham, Isaiah Likely, and kind of that whole trio. You could put it as a quartet, right? Quintuplet. There's so much that ends up unlocking with Mark Andrews back in the fold here. So I think for the Ravens, there's a lot to like, but there also has to be, I think, some cautious optimism, because for me at least, I don't necessarily see a role where Andrews is 100% healthy, but if he's back, he's your number one tight end. I think there's this thing with Isaiah Likely of, he can come in and he can be Mark Andrews and he can replace Mark Andrews, right? That's kind of the thing. But I don't really know if that's the case. In fact, I know it's not. I think for the Ravens, they have this thing where it's better to have two great tight ends. And I think Andrews at this point is still better than Likely, right? But Likely has kind of been unlocked with this whole situation. So I'm really excited for it, especially because of the fact that with two tight end sets, it was one of their most efficient personnel groupings when they were on the field. Now, it wasn't like it wasn't like they had all this sample size with it. I do think that Baltimore, they had the ability to use it. They didn't really. I think the Ravens were trying to figure out how Isaiah Likely was going to be used. And Andrews goes out, and we kind of saw it last season where Baltimore, they didn't really use Likely in a way that I thought they should have been used. But then he ends up getting utilized again, and utilized it the right way when Andrews is out. So can they find a balance of having Andrews and Likely back on the field? Now, in terms of what it means for Andrews and his actual availability, I mean, for me, I think that divisional round is a little bit dicey, and you want to be careful and cautious with this whole thing too, right? Because if you bring back Andrews too early, not only does it compromise another injury or re-injury or something along those lines, but you could also have a situation like we saw in 2019 against Tennessee, where Andrews was not 100% healthy. You know, I'm not at liberty to say whether he should have played or not. I don't know if he should have or not, but he clearly wasn't 100% healthy. He can't jump up for a ball early, and that impacts the entire outcome of that game because the Ravens were driving. Andrews can't get the ball, and all of a sudden, you know, Andrews has to jump, can't do it, and the Titans get the turnover there. So having Andrews on the field in any capacity, even if it's a decoy capacity, is good. He wasn't running at full speed in the practice clips, but John Harbaugh did speak to the media after practice and ended up saying that they're on schedule. The timeline is there with Mark Andrews. So what's that timeline, right? We don't know what that timeline is. But at the end of the day, Baltimore, I don't know. It could have been a little bit of, well, we're just going to use this because Harbaugh's been very interesting, I'd say, with injuries this year, where I don't know. They've been very close to the vest. And I think really ever since the JK situation, the Lamar situation, that's what John Harbaugh has been. So it's going to be interesting. I see Nanarave8 in the chat saying this is good news indeed, but sure hope the Ravens don't cut Isaiah Likely snaps because he's an awesome tight end as well. Yeah, and it's big that they can utilize both those guys. Both those guys are weapons. And I'm going to try to pull up a couple of stats here when it comes to them and their actual two tight end set and what that means. I can't remember who put it out, but here, Lamar Jackson with Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely on the field together this season, 25 for 34. So a 73.5% completion percentage, 260 yards, 1 touchdown, no interception, and a 0.39 EPA per drop back, which if you don't know what EPA is very good, but it's a lot more 11 personnel groupings than two tight end sets. So maybe now Likely's kind of broken out in this way, they will utilize that. But in my opinion, you have to utilize both guys. I see Alyssa in the chat saying, let's go. People are excited, right? I think that there was always a possibility there was the outside chance, but with the fibia and the ankle ligament injury, there was a lot of pessimism that maybe he could have returned or not. And it's very good news that he's back. And again, doesn't mean anything's guaranteed. Maybe he plays, maybe he doesn't, but we will see. And Nanarave8 saying Manders being back is awesome news. Yeah. And this is the same comment there I see, but it's in terms of snapping Isaiah or cutting Isaiah Likely snaps, you shouldn't do it. If you're the Ravens, you should be able to utilize. And I think there is always this proxy where if the number one player returns, you're not going to be out on the field in one tight end sets. Who would you rather have out there between Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely with just one tight end? It's Mark Andrews, but you can utilize Likely from the slot and you can even put him out wide if you want to. And you can use Andrews in multiple different ways too, but having Andrews and Flowers and Beckham and Bateman and Likely and all these guys, it means a ton to have all those weapons around Lamar Jackson. And this is what we've been asking for, right? For so many years with Lamar. Get him the receivers, put these weapons around him, and it'll be awesome. So I'm really excited to see it. And John Harbaugh speaking to the media right now, or he might have just finished up. I haven't been able to keep track, obviously, since I started streaming. But for me, this is big because we don't know, again, if Andrews is going to be back to vision right. If I had to guess, and again, I'm not a doctor, so don't take what I say medically with any seriousness. I'm just speculating, obviously. I would say the divisional round is kind of iffy, but if he is going to come back, and the AFC Championship seems like a pretty decent spot to where he could potentially come back. Again, not going to be 100%, but it seems like Andrews is just not going to miss this thing for the world, right? He wants to be a part of this. He wants to be available. And the Ravens wouldn't be bringing him back if he couldn't at least contribute in some way, shape, or form. Now, maybe this is just them activating his practice window. He doesn't come back. I'd probably put that on the lower end of possibilities. But I still think that just even having Andrews back at practice, having that possibility is so awesome to this offense, because it means so much to him. Andrews is their best pass catcher. You can argue Zay Flowers, and he's certainly earned to be in the conversation, but Andrews is your over the middle of the field presence. He brings you so much. Teams have to respect him. Teams have to put manpower and attention in his direction. And then it's going to open up things for other guys like a Flowers. And we kind of saw that over the course of the season, where I just think there's so many weapons now. It's going to make it very hard for opposing defenses to kind of hone in. And now with the way the offense has been cooking, and they kind of found their identity without Andrews, they can now insert him back into this picture, and I think it's going to be awesome what they can do. Coming up, though, we are going to be talking a bit about Isaiah Likely a little bit more, and what his role could be if Andrews ends up returning here for the playoffs. Stay tuned for that. We have a lot to get to here on this instant reaction live edition of Locked On Ravens. First, this show is sponsored by Gametime, and for tickets, there have been a bunch of frustrating ticket buying experiences in my life. Sometimes I couldn't find seats that were good with no deals there. Couldn't find last-minute tickets. I wasn't even sure sometimes if the seats were good, but you shouldn't have to worry when you're buying tickets to your next event, because Gametime is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you. They have killer last-minute deals, all in prices, views from receipt, and the best price guarantee. Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. You can browse through the Gametime app, and there are plenty of things you can look at there, such as concerts, playoff games, and more. Obviously, the Ravens, they don't have a game this weekend with the bye week, but the divisional round, the conference championship, if the Ravens get there, that will be available over on Gametime. They have views from all the seats in the venue, and Gametime is the only ticketing app that gives you complete peace of mind with your purchase. You can see the views from your seat before you buy, so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. They have all in prices to show your total up front, so you know exactly what you're getting with a great deal before you check out. Plus, they're obsessed with finding ways to help you save money on tickets. They have zone deals, where you pick the section and Gametime picks the seats for big time savings. Did the guess we're gonna buy tickets with Gametime down the Gametime app? Create an account and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your purchase. Terms apply again. Create an account, redeem code LOCKEDON, spelled LOCKEDON, for $20 off. Download Gametime to last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. We're back, our second segment, Locked On Ravens. Kevin Oestreicher with an instant reaction Friday afternoon edition of Locked On Ravens. Thanks so much if you're here live in the chat for tuning in and making Locked On Ravens your first listen of the afternoon here each and every day. I see Jacob Ward checking in, saying maybe just trying to get as close to 100% before the Super Bowl if we make it. It could be, because Super Bowl is the whole extravaganza, right? You get a couple weeks before the Super Bowl is played. So maybe they're opening his practice window right now, see where he's at, see how he practices, and then they can make a decision before the Super Bowl if that is the case. Now, I think they can get to the Super Bowl without Mark Andrews. I think they can win the Super Bowl without Mark Andrews. But him being there just increases the possibility and increases the likelihood. See what I did there? Likelihood. No pun intended. No, it was a pun intended. But it increases the likelihood that they end up making it and winning the Super Bowl. But for Isaiah Likely, he's been such a presence for them. And I think with Andrews coming back, you have to do a better job of utilizing them together. Over the first 2 years of Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely being together and them both being healthy, we haven't seen the Ravens utilize Isaiah Likely like they should. And we've seen whenever Andrews goes out, Likely turns into a tight end one monster, fantasy football league winner, making big plays, throwing guys off of him, getting open. You can utilize that with Mark Andrews, and it should only make things better for a guy like Isaiah Likely. But you can't fall victim to, I think, what they've fallen victim. I don't know why they fell victim to it last year. This year is a little more easy to understand, but you have to utilize all your weapons. And if that means Rashad Bateman has to come off the field for a few plays, you keep Odell fresh, right? Utilize those two tight end sets. Maybe Pat Ricard doesn't play and you use two tight ends, although I think Ricard being on the field in play action situations is really important. But Andrews and Likely together form this really awesome duo that we really haven't been able to see take the field together. And for me, I just really hope that Baltimore can find a way to use those guys, because Andrews is such a beast over the middle of the field. He makes things happen. And as I talked about, teams have to bring that manpower over to him, and teams are starting to have to do that with Isaiah Likely, but they don't respect Likely as much as they respect Andrews. Mark Andrews has so much respect in this league, and Likely, obviously, I mean, he should, right? He should have that respect, but it's just, him being a second-year player, this, that, and the other, but it'll open up things for Zay Flowers, open up things for Odell and Rashad Bateman and all those guys. Plus, it just gives the Ravens more options, and any options at this point to have those guys back. It's going to be really, really big. I mean, Mark Andrews is their number one offensive weapon. That is exactly what it is. So I don't necessarily know what the timeline is again, but I think that for me, realistically, it could be AFC Championship, could be Super Bowl divisional round. It is a little iffy because, again, you don't want to rush Andrews back and have this become a longer-term problem, or just have him not be out there at what he can do, and then it impacts the actual game there. I see George checking in, saying with Andrews being back, likely snap count is definitely going to be affected. There's no way around it, but definitely need to be running more 2 tight end sets. And George, you're right. I think that with Andrews back, and I kind of talked about it a bit earlier, when there's one tight end on the field and everybody's healthy, if there's one tight end, who's it going to be? It's going to be Mark Andrews. You want it to be Mark Andrews, right? That's what it is. Or in those situations, maybe you have 3 wide and 1 tight end, or 4 wide. Your tight end in that situation is going to be Andrews. But I think the joy of an Isaiah Likely and what Likely can do is you can line him up out wide, line him up in the slot. But you're right. When those one tight end sets, Andrews is going to be your one tight end. Andrews is your best tight end. I know Likely's been awesome. He's been great. I think he's going to be a big part of the future and a big part of this playoff run. But Andrews is your best tight end. And I think some people have actually lost focus of that and saying, well, they can trade Andrews and it'll be fine. No, you want Mark Andrews on the field no matter what if you're the Ravens here. So it's going to be important for the Ravens to kind of judge this effectively, right? What can Andrews do? How can he be utilized? Is it a decoy? Is it playing 50% of snaps? Is it him playing at 50%? We saw the practice video, and, again, not running at full speed, definitely just, first practice back, a ramp up situation. But again, the same timetable. He said that they're in the range for the timetable, and he did individual work today. And for the other injuries, just, for a brief side note here, John Harbaugh said they'll know more about those next week. So Zay Flowers and Malik Harrison, Marlon Humphrey, those guys, I feel like everybody should be back by the time the playoffs start here. No guarantees, obviously, but the way the Ravens are doing things this year compared to 2019, just another side note, is much better in my opinion. It feels like they have a game, doesn't it? This week, it feels like they have a game where they practice Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, media availabilities, this, that, and the other. Feels like Baltimore is going through a whole game week prep. They're going to have the stadium practice. I believe that's tomorrow. So there's a lot to like in terms of the approach the Ravens have this season. And of course, we've talked about here on this show, the mentality of everything. So our episode for today with Kaji Ismail was, is this season a Super Bowl or bust season? Is this season a disappointment if they don't win the Super Bowl? So check that out. But if Andrews comes back, it just feels like destiny, doesn't it? Again, you got to do your job, got to win the games. I'm not crowning the Ravens champions right now, but it just feels like for the Ravens, everything is lining up. The stars are aligning, and I'm really hopeful that it is the case for them. And another thing that John Harbaugh did is he had the team in pads today for practice. So they're going to find out who they play Sunday, because they're not going to know if Pittsburgh beats Buffalo. Obviously, that's going to be their opponent, but those two teams, Buffalo and Pittsburgh, play on Sunday at 1 p.m. So we'll be going live again, I think, right after the Ravens find out their playoff opponents, just to kind of dive into a little matchup stuff. We also have a bonus episode coming out Sunday morning about Lamar's legacy, so that'll be exciting. Be sure to stay tuned for all of that. But this is awesome. This is awesome. It feels like there's just been good news after good news after good news for the Ravens in terms of their personnel, and hopefully Andrews can make it back and be effective for them, and this isn't just them rushing him back. But I don't think that's what they're doing, because they've been really cautious with their guys really since the JK injury back in 2021. They've been really cautious with the timelines. And, this Andrews injury, it looked really bad. It came on a hip drop tackle, but maybe it just wasn't as bad as it looked. Still had to have the surgery, right? Still was a long-term bad injury, but there was fear for ACL and knee stuff and, full breaks and all this stuff. Him returning, the timeline for the fibia stuff, I think, is about 6 weeks. We're about 7 weeks out from his surgery. I think 52 days is the number. So it's awesome that Andrews is able to return here, but it's not all necessarily good news for the Ravens. The Andrews it is, but there are more coaches that are getting interviews, and the Ravens is definitely looking like they're going to lose 1 or 2 coaches here this coaching cycle. Stay tuned. We'll get into the latest updates on that and a lot more on this instant reaction live edition of Locked On Ravens. First, this episode is brought to you by Jase Medical. And I know we come to sports to escape from some of the crazy realities of real life, but can we just talk for a minute about preparing for real life? Because according to the FDA, pharmacies are running out of antibiotics like amoxicillin right in the middle of the worst flu season in over a decade. That's pretty scary stuff. And I can't imagine a more helpless feeling than if someone I knew or someone I cared about got sick while a supply chain issue kept them from life-saving medications they needed. Thankfully, it'll be okay, though, because of Jase Medical. The Jase case is a pack of 5 different antibiotics to treat long lists of bacterial illnesses, including UTIs, respiratory infections, sinusitis, skin infections, among others. This stuff could happen to any of us. Visit jasemedical.com and complete your physician encounter. It'll be reviewed by a board-certified physician, and your medications will be dispensed by a licensed pharmacy at a fraction of the regular cost. It's never been more important to prepare than for today. Go to jasemedical.com and use offer code LOCKEDON to get $20 off your order. We're back. Our final segment, Locked On Ravens, rounding out the show. Kevin Oestreicher, instant reaction episode here on Friday. Been a crazy week of shows. If you haven't checked out our content from throughout the week, we do 5 days a week here on Locked On Ravens, plus bonus content as well. Live streams like this going live after every single piece of big Ravens news and after every single Ravens game. We'll have a bonus episode coming out on Sunday. Be sure to subscribe, follow along. The show's in both video form and audio form. You can catch these live streams live or after the fact in video form and audio form as well. In the chat here, Waddles Love saying all this coaching stuff shouldn't be allowed to happen during the season. I don't care if it's postseason or not. That just shouldn't be allowed. And George agrees with him. I actually agree with you guys too. I think that, again, I understand the coaching cycle is, you got to act fast. Like the Patriots just hired Gerard Mayo to be the heir to Bill Belichick, and that's that thing. I think internal hires like that are okay, but when it comes to maybe just internal stuff versus external, you can interview internal candidates during the postseason, but you have to wait till after the Super Bowl to do external. And I think that coaches, Mike McDonald's going through this for the first time. He said that, he talked with John Harbaugh, and John Harbaugh's talked with him about the coaching process and everything. So the latest updates about this, we know Mike McDonald's been getting interviews. He's had 4. The teams off the top of my head are, if I'm not mistaken, Commanders, Panthers, Commanders, Panthers. Who are the other ones? The Falcons are one, and then I can't remember the 4th one. But McDonald has had 4, and Titans, Titans is the last one. And then you have Todd Monken with the Panthers and the Chargers. Anthony Weaver has the Falcons, and one other one, I think. Maybe he's Titan. No, he's Commanders as well. Yeah, just all crazy, and I can't remember everything. But then John Harbaugh said that their secondary coach, Narn Wilson, he interviewed or will interview for the Giants defensive coordinator opening. And Chris Hewitt, their pass game coordinator, will interview for the Jaguars defensive coordinator opening as well. So at this point, it seems like Baltimore is I'm not putting anything in writing right now, but their defensive staff is highly, highly in demand. And rightfully so, right? They've had an incredible defensive season. And whether it's Mike McDonald going to, I feel like his top fit, I don't feel like he's going to the Commanders if he goes anywhere. I feel like it'd be more of like in Atlanta. He's a Georgia, it is Georgia connections, maybe Tennessee. I don't see him taking the Panthers job. I could see Todd Monken taking the Panthers job. I feel like if he gets offered it, maybe he would take it, although I wouldn't want to go coach in Carolina right now with everything that's going on there. But for Baltimore, with Weaver and Wilson and Hewitt and all these guys, they're going to probably lose 1 or 2 of those. And maybe it's more minor coaching staff, right? Someone who doesn't have the role McDonald has or have the role that Weaver has. Maybe it's just like a minor personnel thing here or there. But it happens every season. The Ravens are kind of a coaching factory. So I don't necessarily know. What is Love saying? Are they going after Browns or Bears defensive people at all? I don't think so. I know Ben Johnson, the Lions offensive guy, he's maybe the next coach of the Commanders. I think that's the latest I've seen there, but it doesn't seem like, I don't think Jim Schwartz has gotten any any offers or any requests, if I'm not mistaken. I think, yeah, it's just everybody wants to go for, I think, the young, innovative offensive mind, right? And that's kind of where everybody's going with it. But for me, I don't really care. I just want a coach that's going to, has the players' backs, the players like them. And McDonald, he has an opportunity to go out there and do something special. And I see Nana Ray saying Mike McDonald needs to go focus on his job at hand. Munga said he's focused on what's at hand with our team now. I think both of them are still focused. And what does it mean if Mike McDonald and Todd Monken win the Super Bowl? It means they have even more leverage, right? They have even more leverage, and that will increase their possibility. If their goal is really to get a head coaching opportunity, winning the Super Bowl, having a great playoff showing, that will really help them in terms of getting leverage with those teams. If the defense falters, if the offense falters, maybe teams are like, I don't really know about this guy anymore. We're going to go in a different direction. So there are benefits to them winning the Super Bowl, right? I mean, I think they should be focused on their jobs. I 100% agree. I think they are. They're locked in. Todd Monken said as much, and I think Mike McDonald said as much as well. But at this point, I think that Baltimore, even though it's a great opportunity, some coaches just, have goals of being a head coach. I think a lot of coaches have goals of being a head coach. And as long as John Harbaugh is with the Ravens, it's not going to happen. I don't think John Harbaugh is retiring anytime soon or riding off into the sunset. As much as that storyline would kind of be awesome and what it would be, I don't see it. I mean, have you seen that family, that Harbaugh family? They are all over the place. Yeah, I see Nana Ray and Wadislav saying that Panthers job. Stay away. I agree. Stay away from that Panthers job. Well, let's talk about the All-Pros for a second here. Great honors for these guys. These are the official All-Pros. And I think well-deserved for every single one of them. You have 3 first-team All-Pros and 3 second-team All-Pros for the Ravens. Lamar Jackson, Kyle Hamilton, Roquan Smith are your first-team All-Pros. And then you have Patrick Queen, Patrick Ricard, and Justin Madubuike as second-team All-Pros. And there were a couple other notes about the All-Pros in terms of runner-ups and things of that nature. I'm pulling that up quickly here. Let's see. Yeah, Tyler Linderbaum, 4th among centers in All-Pro votes. Kevin Zeitler, 3rd among right guards. Morgan Moses, 5th among right tackles. Geno Stone, 5th among safeties. Justin Tucker, 6th among kickers. Devin Duvernay, 6th among kick returners. Just rounded effort. And I put out the stat about just where these guys were taken. These weren't first overall picks or top 10 picks. The one that was drafted the highest out of all those guys who the Ravens drafted themselves was Kyle Hamilton in number 14. Patrick Queen was 28. Lamar Jackson, 32. Justin Madubuike, 71. Patrick Ricard wasn't even drafted. And Roquan Smith, they acquired him for the number 53 overall selection. So all across the board, awesome honors for those guys. All well-deserved. It'll probably impact contracts, and I think it absolutely should, and I think it's very well-deserved. A guy like Kyle Hamilton getting the first-team All-Pro in his 2nd season in the league, just unbelievable. Queen and Madubuike getting those All-Pros in contract years, great for them. So all across the board here, just seems like the Ravens, the vibes are there. Everything's working out for them, and it's really exciting. The Ravens, again, will find out that opponent between the Texans, the Browns, the Chiefs, or not the Chiefs, excuse me, the Dolphins and the Steelers. That'll all happen and come to them Sunday right after the Steelers game, because obviously if the Steelers win, that will be the Ravens' opponent, and that's that because they're the lowest seed. But maybe they'll have Mark Andrews back for that divisional game. And here on this show, I'm really excited to continue diving into everything. And it's cool to do these live streams, engaging in the chat, reacting instantly to big news. And it's awesome to see everybody reacting as well. It seems like there's excitement around Mark Andrews. We'll see what ends up happening with his timeline. I would, again, my prediction, not a doctor, but I would probably say if I had to pick, I'll pick AFC Championship game is when he returns to practice. And Wadislav saying, all I can think of is the Thanos gift where he gets the Infinity Stone, puts it on his, you got the stone. Mark Andrews, that final stone in the gauntlet there for the Ravens. You got Zay and Isaiah Likely and Beckham and Bateman and Mark Andrews. You put that in there and it feels like everything. It does feel like, again, I've been kind of hinting at it for a while here, but I do think this is the Ravens' year to win the Super Bowl. And that's not me jinxing it. I'm not trying to jinx it. I'm just saying it just feels like who's going to stop them? They've passed every test. They are the test, as I've talked about for weeks and weeks and weeks now. it just, what team scares you if you're the Ravens? It just feels like they're on a different playing field above every other team, especially in the AFC, where, again, our show for today, originally, the one that came out with Kaji Ismail, was, would this season be a massive failure if the Ravens don't win the Super Bowl? I mean, I think it would be, because my expectations have kind of shifted for them, and I have much higher expectations because they've earned those higher expectations. So if Mark Andrews comes back, obviously those expectations probably increase even more. But that's all I have to hear today on this instant reaction episode of Locked On Ravens. I appreciate everybody tuning in. We'll be back here on Sunday with our bonus episode. Then we'll go live later in the day breaking down the Ravens playoff opponent. So be sure to subscribe to this channel, follow along in audio form and video form, turn notifications on as well. It means a ton here. 5 days a week of Ravens content. We got news, analysis, updates, the whole 9 yards. So we're building something special. I really appreciate everybody for being along for the ride, whether you're an everydayer, whether this is your first time in, or if you're somewhere in the middle, you've been in a couple of times. Thank you for supporting me and for tuning into the show. We'll be right back here soon on Locked On Ravens. Stay tuned. We'll see you right back here on Locked On Ravens coming up in the near future. It's going to be really exciting here as this team continues to hopefully get more good news. I'll see you right back here soon on Locked On Ravens.